From this point, a series of events follow that include our departure for what's supposed to be just a family vacation in Belize, but turns into a family's quest as the date approaches. We have an unexpected layover in Guatemala City, courtesy of Taka Airlines, during which time our daughter becomes physically very ill. And she refuses to take the medicine that her pediatrician has prescribed, and she starts crying that her imaginary friend doesn't want her to get well. And that's when, that's the moment in the story for me when the existence of this character changes from just being annoying and somewhat creepy to being downright frightening. And as soon as we land in Belize, we find a healer who we can bring, to whom we can bring her, and we go to his cabin in a little Mayan village of San Antonio, where we have a very confusing and alarming scene because of language barriers and our own naivete. He does nothing but touch her wrist and recite prayers, but she gets very, very agitated. Actually, agitated is putting it mildly. She kicks and screams completely out of control. And I wind up grabbing her and rushing out of the cabin. And I run past an oil drum that's burning in a neighboring yard, which actually becomes a pretty important prop in the story. And I go and run for the safety of the van that we arrived in. And this particular scene in chapter 6 is another important plot point in the story, because it's the moment that I realize that everything I thought I believed in may not have any currency in this new environment, and that I am in way over my head. And it's a very important moment because in writer's speak, it ups the ante of the story, and it leads us directly into the next phase of the journey. From that point forward, the way that I start interpreting the world around me changes rapidly, in part because of what we're experiencing, but also in part because of this completely foreign and exotic and new environment that we have suddenly found ourselves in Western Belize. Down there, I was introduced to a completely different way of viewing our problem, much more like Carmen's take on it. But they had a very matter-of-fact method for dealing with it. Among the indigenous people of Belize, if your child has an abrupt change of behavior and starts talking to a character you can't see, you take her to the bush doctor, and it's taken care of. You know, if you break your leg, you go to the hospital in Belize City. If you want to have a baby, you go to the midwife. If your kid has an imaginary friend, you go to the bush doctor. And so suddenly I was the odd man out for thinking it might be psychiatric in nature. And that was really disarming, to say the least, to be surrounded by a completely different thought process or pattern. So I'm going to read you a very short passage now before ending that takes place in chapter 7, because I just want you to be able to see how everything is starting to change for this narrator. And now the way that she starts to think and view herself begins to change. The scene that I'm going to read to you, it takes place on Christmas night, after we have seen the bush doctor, the first bush doctor. It's on the lawn of the resort in Belize where we are staying. We're staying with a family that runs a resort in Belize. And a marimba party is going on in the background. A Christmas party is taking place. And I have put my daughter to bed in our cabana, and I'm standing out on the lawn looking at the sky. The Mayans believe that their creation myth was written in the stars, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece of their cosmology. And I am out there with another guest, who I call Shakti in the book. She happens to be a self-described psychic from Santa Cruz, California, staying in the cabana next to ours. And we have just resolved some friction that we've had between us since we met. I put that mildly, but you'll have to read the book to see what I'm talking about. In this scene, we are sliding into a sort of friendship that had been blocked by some misunderstandings. And her kindness allows me to share a moment with her, a moment of clarity, when both my daughter's behavior and my own behavior start coming into more of a clear focus. But I hope also shows the reader how I'm changing and not changing at the same time in this new environment. So I'm just going to jump right into our conversation here. So we're standing on the lawn, we're underneath the stars, the marimba music is playing behind us, all the guests are back there dancing, and we're alone in the dark, except for the little flashlight stuck to her forehead. Shakti nods. It's a slow nod, a quiet nod, devoid of anger or judgment, just a gentle, pure form of agreement. It says, I hear what you're saying, and against all odds, it makes me want to tell her more. You know, I say, back home I was trying to convince myself, oh, this thing with Maya isn't such a big deal. Maybe you're just making it up because you need to have conflict or drama in your life or whatever. Because whenever I insisted there was a problem with Maya, people would start looking at me like I was the one with the problem. And so I started thinking maybe I was. then I'd be even more determined to figure out what was going on with her and fix it just to prove everyone else wrong. But down here, the problem is real. No one even considers it might be in my head. It's like stepping into an alternate reality. So you'd think I would like that, but it's actually freaking me out a little. I'm not used to being taken seriously on this. The words pour out of me as if they've been pent up behind a locked gate. Down here, the verdict seems to be clear. My kid has a spiritual problem that needs to be cured, I continue. I don't know if I totally believe that, but it's tempting for me to get swept up in that kind of jungle logic. I want to have that kind of certainty. I need that kind of certainty. I think everyone does. But then before you know it, you're pouring plant water on top of your kid's head because that's what you're supposed to do here. And you don't even recognize the person who's doing it anymore. You look at your hands pouring the water and you think, these used to be my hands. Who do they belong to now? How crazy is that? It doesn't sound that crazy to me, Shakti says. Well, it feels crazy, I say. Not while I'm doing it, but definitely after. This trip is going to change your life, you know, Shakti says. I think you and Uzi are really brave to be doing it. Brave? I don't know, I say. Sometimes I think brave would be to wait it out and see if Maya gets better on her own, like everyone at home says she will. Sometimes I think that pushing for a resolution instead of admitting I don't have control is the cowardly act, not the brave one. No, she says, I think what you and Uzi are doing takes courage and faith. And you know, just exposing your daughter to this way of thinking is going to expand her consciousness. She's lucky. Shakti, I have to tell you, I say, when you say things like that, they just go right over my head. She laughs. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Don't worry, it'll make sense to you one day. So I won't give away the rest of the book because I don't like reviews either that give away the ending of a book. But we do go on to have more unexpected experience with some really colorful characters. And it does culminate in a healing of the whole family, which I had not expected at all. And in doing so, we discover firsthand that what seemed unbelievable to us when we left Los Angeles can be, in another context, actually quite ordinary. When the boundaries start shifting like this, it raises the question of whether anything really is ordinary or extraordinary, or if it's just our thinking that makes it so. So I can say that through writing this book, I have gained a much greater appreciation for locating the extraordinary in the ordinary, both in writing and in my life in general, and also for finding the ordinary in the extraordinary, and for presenting the unbelievable as believable. All of which were quite extraordinary lessons and unexpected lessons to learn as a writer. I mean, it's my firm belief, and I do tell this to my students, that when you choose to be a writer, you choose to be a lifelong learner. And insofar that writing, particularly memoir writing, is a process of ongoing self-discovery, in your own literary endeavors, because I know many of you are writers, I wish for similar extraordinary experiences for all of you. Thank you so much for being here tonight.